When one speaks of clarity, it is not merely about the ability to see. It is not about sight as the eyes provide it, but about perception that arises from within. Intention without clarity is like walking through a fog. Each step may still move you forward, but you do not know toward what, nor do you understand why you move. The power of intention begins with understanding. To intend without clarity is to desire without direction, and to desire without direction is to fall into the cycle of distraction, dissatisfaction, and despair. Clarity of intention means that the energy you release into the world is shaped, defined, and precise. When the mind is clouded, the heart wavers, and the actions that follow become scattered. But when intention is sharp, when it is distilled to its essence, it becomes like the edge of a blade. It cuts through confusion, through hesitation, through all unnecessary detours. A person who cultivates clarity of intention is one who no longer wastes energy on noise. They know why they rise, why they act, and why they continue. Most people live with intentions borrowed from others. They carry desires that were not born in their own silence, but planted in their minds by society, family, culture, or comparison. This is why many chase without fulfillment, because the race was never truly theirs. Clarity of intention demands that you stop and question. Whose voice am I following? Whose dream am I building? And whose desire have I mistaken for my own? Until one asks these questions, intention cannot crystallize, because it is still mixed with illusions. The process of finding clarity is not about adding more, but about subtracting. It is about stripping away what is false, unnecessary, and temporary. Just as water becomes clear when impurities settle to the bottom, so too does intention become clear when distractions are allowed to fall away. This is not a passive process. It is active discipline. It is choosing to sit with discomfort, to face confusion, and to allow silence to reveal what is real. Silence sharpens intention, because in silence, the noise of the world loses its hold. Clarity of intention also requires alignment between thought, word, and action. Many say what they do not mean, do what they do not believe, and think what they will never act upon. This fragmentation creates weakness. It divides energy into separate directions, scattering strength. But when thought, word, and action are aligned with a single clear intention, a person becomes unstoppable. The clarity is no longer just mental, it becomes embodied. Every gesture, every step, every decision carries the weight of purpose. Intention becomes blurred when fear dominates. Fear whispers of failure, of rejection, of inadequacy. Fear convinces the mind to compromise, to dilute the truth of what is desired. Clarity is the opposite of compromise. It is the willingness to name what you truly seek, without apology, without disguise. To intend clearly means to declare, this is what I stand for, this is where I am going, and this is what I am willing to give myself to fully. It is not arrogance, it is honesty. When intention is unclear, energy leaks away. One day is spent chasing one desire, the next is spent chasing another. Projects are started but abandoned. Goals are set but forgotten. Commitments are made but broken. The lack of clarity drains not only time but spirit. Yet when intention is clear, even the smallest step becomes powerful. Even a pause holds meaning. Even a failure transforms into learning, because all of it serves the same central direction. Clarity of intention also reveals the truth about effort. Effort without clarity can feel endless, exhausting, and unrewarding. But effort with clarity becomes devotion. Every sacrifice is understood, every challenge is meaningful, and every repetition carries weight. The body can endure much when the mind knows why. Without clarity, the body collapses under pressure. With clarity, it rises because it is guided by something greater than fatigue. The world responds differently to clarity. When one is clear, opportunities appear that were invisible before. It is not that the world changes, it is that perception sharpens, and suddenly what was once unseen becomes visible. Just as a hunter with sharp eyes can spot movement in the forest, a mind with sharp clarity can spot doors where others see only walls. The intention becomes a lens, and through that lens, life reorganizes itself. Clarity does not come instantly. It must be cultivated like sharpening a mirror. Each day, one must return to the intention and examine it. Is it truly mine or borrowed? Is it precise or vague? Is it aligned with my actions or only my words? This reflection is uncomfortable because it forces one to admit when they are not living honestly. But this discomfort is necessary because without it, clarity cannot form. In truth, clarity of intention is not about the future. It is about the present. It is not about imagining where you want to be years from now, but about fully knowing why you take the step in front of you today. The future is shaped by endless unknowns, but the present is always within reach. When intention is clear in this moment, the future does not need to be controlled because it will unfold as a natural extension of the clarity held now. Clarity is not rigid. It is not the stubborn refusal to adapt. True clarity allows adjustment without losing direction, like a river that bends yet continues to flow toward the ocean. The essence of intention remains the same, but the form it takes can change as life shifts. This is why clarity is stronger than desire, because desire often attaches to specific forms, while clarity attaches to essence. When the form changes, desire suffers, but clarity simply finds another path. To cultivate clarity of intention is to reclaim power over energy, attention, and time. It is to rise each day knowing what must be done and why it must be done. It is to speak with words that align with truth, to act with choices that align with direction, and to think with focus that aligns with vision. It is to live without the fog of confusion, without the weight of distraction, without the weakness of divided energy. Energy is everywhere, but most people are blind to it because they look only with their eyes and listen only with their ears. Recognition of energy is not a matter of sight or sound. It is an inner sensing, a sensitivity that arises when one begins to notice the subtle currents flowing within and around the body. The heart beats, the lungs expand, the mind moves from thought to thought. And in every transition there is an energy exchange. To recognize it is to awaken from the heavy sleep of unconscious living. When you enter a room, before a single word is spoken, there is already an impression forming inside of you. Some spaces feel heavy, while others feel light. Some people radiate calmness, while others bring agitation. This is not random. It is energy that you are sensing. Recognition means becoming conscious of this subtle language, not dismissing it as coincidence or imagination. The more one pays attention, the more one realizes that energy is communicating constantly. Energy recognition begins first with the self. Many search outside for answers without realizing that the first source of energy is within their own body. Every emotion carries an energetic weight. Anger contracts, fear restricts, sadness sinks, joy expands, love flows. By observing how the body responds in each state, one begins to map the inner terrain of energy. To recognize is not to judge. It is simply to see clearly. When anger arises, recognition does not mean suppression, nor does it mean indulgence. It means noticing its presence, feeling where it moves in the body, and understanding that it is energy that has taken a particular form. Breath is the first teacher of energy recognition. By slowing down and observing the inhale and the exhale, you realize that each breath is a wave of life force. When shallow, the energy feels scattered and weak. When deep and steady, the energy feels anchored and alive. In the beginning, attention to breath seems simple, but through consistent practice, a person begins to sense the subtle shifts in energy flow. A single exhale can release tension carried for hours. A single inhale can awaken clarity. Recognition deepens when one understands that breath is not only oxygen. It is the carrier of energy through which the body and mind are constantly renewed. Beyond the body, energy extends into thought. Every thought is charged with a vibration. Repetitive negative thoughts drain the body, while constructive thoughts uplift. Yet many remain unaware of this energetic consequence, assuming thoughts are weightless. To recognize energy in thought is to notice the after effect. Does a certain thought leave you contracted, anxious, tired? Or does it bring expansion, lightness, possibility? By paying attention, one learns to distinguish between thoughts that nourish and thoughts that consume. When recognition deepens, the boundary between inner and outer begins to dissolve. The energy of environments, the rhythm of nature, the presence of other beings, all become part of a larger field that you are connected to. Sitting beside water, there is a calm energy that begins to resonate with your own inner state. Standing in the forest, the grounded strength of trees subtly aligns you. Walking through a crowded marketplace, the intensity of movement and desire can unsettle you if there is no awareness. Energy is constantly flowing, exchanging, influencing. Recognition means you begin to navigate these currents consciously instead of being unconsciously carried by them. Energy recognition is not mystical, it is practical. In relationships, recognizing the energy of words matters more than the words themselves. A statement may appear polite, but the energy beneath it reveals impatience or frustration. Similarly, Silence may appear empty, but the energy carried in that silence can be heavy with presence or light with openness. By becoming sensitive to these layers, communication moves beyond surface level and begins to touch authenticity. In daily life, recognition of energy shapes choices. Food carries energy depending on how it is grown, prepared, and consumed. Technology carries energy depending on how it is used and for how long it occupies attention. Work carries energy depending on whether it is aligned with one's values or not. By learning to sense the energetic consequences of actions, a person begins to live more deliberately. Instead of asking, "Is this good or bad?" the question becomes, "What energy does this create in me? And what energy do I bring into the world through it?" The more energy is recognized, the more one sees how it transforms. Nothing stays fixed. Sadness can shift into compassion. Anger can transform into strength. Fear can turn into awareness. Recognition allows transformation because it shines light on patterns that would otherwise remain hidden. Without recognition, energy stagnates, repeating the same cycles endlessly. With recognition, energy moves, and when it moves, it evolves. To recognize energy is also to recognize responsibility. Every word spoken carries a charge that can heal or harm. Every action taken plants an energetic seed that will grow in time. Even the energy one holds silently within affects the collective atmosphere. Responsibility does not mean guilt or pressure. It means awareness of influence. When you recognize that your inner state radiates outward, you begin to cultivate inner clarity, not just for yourself, but for the space you share with others. Ultimately, energy recognition is a discipline of attention. It is not gained through belief, but through practice. By sitting quietly and observing, by walking mindfully and sensing, by breathing with intention, the recognition becomes clearer. Over time, sensitivity sharpens and the invisible becomes visible. Energy stops being an abstract idea and reveals itself as the very substance of experience. In the world we live in today, distractions are endless. Every direction you turn, something is pulling for your attention. Screens light up, notifications call out, conversations scatter across multiple topics, and the mind rarely finds rest. It seems like the ability to focus deeply has become rare, almost like a forgotten art. Yet depth is where truth resides. Depth is where strength is cultivated. Depth is the realm where transformation begins, and it is often hidden beneath layers of noise that most never learn to pierce through. To move toward depth requires the courage to step away from the surface, to refuse the constant pull of distractions, and to enter into the silence where clarity and power wait. Distraction keeps the mind moving in circles. It promises stimulation, but it denies nourishment. Think of the mind as a lake. When winds constantly disturb the surface, the water cannot reflect anything clearly. The light becomes scattered, distorted, and fragmented. But when the winds calm, when stillness takes hold, the water reflects everything perfectly. This is the same with the mind. A distracted mind reflects nothing with clarity. It jumps from one thought to another, never diving deep enough to touch the roots. Depth, however, comes when distractions lose their grip. Then the mind becomes a mirror, capable of revealing truth without distortion. The challenge lies in recognizing how much of life has been built around distraction. From morning until night, energy is scattered across countless small tasks, endless scrolling, fragments of information, fleeting conversations, and shallow pleasures. Each one seems harmless, but together they leave the mind fractured. Depth is sacrificed, and with it, the possibility of growth. A person who remains on the surface never encounters their true potential because they never stay long enough in one place to see what lies beneath. Depth demands patience. Distraction thrives on immediacy. Depth unfolds slowly, like roots growing beneath the soil where no one sees them. But they form the strength that holds a tree upright in every storm. Distraction, however, offers quick satisfaction. A new message, a short video, an immediate reply. But it builds nothing lasting. To choose depth is to accept slowness, to welcome silence, and to endure discomfort. It requires a willingness to sit with the mind even when it resists, even when the body seeks escape. It is not easy, but it is necessary. When you begin to seek depth, you notice how shallow distractions have weakened your energy. The constant chase for the next thing fragments your attention and drains your spirit. But when attention is gathered, when it is directed inward with steadiness, it becomes like a focused beam of light. It cuts through illusions and reveals what is hidden. In depth, you discover that clarity was never absent. It was only covered by noise. The wisdom of the body, the intuition of the spirit, the stillness of the mind, all of it exists beneath the surface. But only in depth can it be touched. Depth also brings strength. When you train the body deeply, with full focus and discipline, the results surpass anything that shallow practice can offer. When you study deeply, immersing yourself with full attention, you gain understanding that cannot be taken away. When you meditate deeply, silence grows louder than the noise of the world. Depth is not about quantity, but quality. It is not about how many hours are spent, but how present you remain within each moment. Distraction multiplies time but empties it of meaning. Depth concentrates time and fills it with essence. There is also freedom in depth. Distraction enslaves the mind to the external. It keeps you reacting, pulled in every direction by whatever enters your field. Depth frees you from this reaction. It anchors you inward, giving you control over where your attention rests. With depth, you choose deliberately rather than scatter carelessly. It is not about rejecting the world, but about engaging with it from a centered state. When depth is established, distractions lose their power. They may appear, but they no longer dictate. The pursuit of depth is not limited to meditation or study. It extends into every action. To walk deeply is to feel each step. To breathe deeply is to truly experience the life within the breath. To listen deeply is to hear what is not said, to sense the meaning beyond words. Depth in relationships brings connection that surface-level interactions can never achieve. Depth in practice builds mastery where shallow repetition brings only illusion of progress. In every domain of life, depth transforms the ordinary into something sacred. But one must remain aware that distractions will always return. The world thrives on them, and the mind, once addicted, seeks them endlessly. To maintain depth requires discipline. It is not a one-time choice, but a constant redirection. The moment you catch yourself drifting on the surface, you must return inward. Each return strengthens the capacity for depth. Slowly, the pull of distraction weakens, and the silence of depth becomes more natural. Depth is demanding, but it is also rewarding. It asks for sacrifice, but it offers something greater in return. The sacrifice is of comfort, of ease, of shallow pleasures. What it gives back is clarity, strength, freedom, and truth. Distraction can entertain, but depth transforms. Distraction may fill time, but depth fills the soul. And in the end, the difference between a life lived on the surface and one rooted in depth is the difference between scattering energy across endless fragments and gathering it into a single powerful force capable of reshaping everything. Trust is one of the most underestimated forces in human life. It is not only the trust we give to others, but the trust we must cultivate within ourselves and in the unseen flow of life itself. Trust is not blind belief, but a willingness to walk without knowing every detail of the path, while still holding certainty that every step has meaning. Alignment is the natural consequence of such trust. When one is aligned, the mind, the body, and the spirit do not fight one another. They move in unison, directed by a purpose that feels greater than individual desire. To understand trust and alignment is to step into a deeper rhythm with life, one that cannot be forced, but can only be entered when resistance dissolves. Most people attempt to control life with fear because fear whispers that if they do not grip tightly, everything will fall apart. This fear leads to tension, to endless strategies of manipulation, and to exhaustion. Trust begins where fear ends. It is the moment one realizes that gripping harder only causes pain, while loosening allows flow. A river does not argue with its banks, it simply moves forward, adapting, bending, reshaping the land and itself. When trust is present, life feels like this river, dynamic, sometimes rapid, sometimes still, but always in movement. Alignment is standing in that river and letting it carry you, not as passive surrender, but as active cooperation with forces greater than your limited view. Trust also means accepting uncertainty without being paralyzed by it. Alignment does not remove challenges, but it changes how challenges are experienced. Instead of seeing obstacles as personal attacks, they are understood as tests, as ways to strengthen clarity, patience, and resilience. Trust allows the heart to say, "This is happening for me, not against me." Alignment makes sure that every action taken afterward is not reactive, but guided by deeper wisdom. It is the unity of thought, feeling, and intention working together, like different instruments forming a single melody. Trust is often tested in silence. In those moments when answers do not come quickly, when efforts seem unrewarded, when the path ahead looks empty, one is tempted to give in to despair. But silence is the training ground of alignment. In silence, the mind reveals its noise, the heart reveals its fears, and the body reveals its restlessness. To sit in silence is to learn to trust that clarity will arise without forcing it. From this patience grows alignment, because only when the noise settles can the true inner voice be heard. To be aligned means to no longer scatter energy. Many people move in contradiction. They say one thing, feel another, and act in yet another direction. This scattering leads to inner conflict, to wasted strength, and to dissatisfaction. Alignment gathers all of these scattered pieces and points them toward one intention. But alignment requires trust, because one cannot align if one is still doubting, still second-guessing every step. Doubt splits energy, while trust unifies it. The unification of energy is what creates momentum, and momentum is what allows transformation. There is also a deep connection between trust and the body. The body holds tension when there is no trust. Muscles tighten, breath shortens, sleep becomes restless. When one begins to cultivate trust, the body responds. Shoulders relax, breathing deepens, presence returns. Alignment is not only spiritual, it is physical. The way you sit, the way you breathe, the way you walk, all reflect whether you are aligned with trust or consumed by fear. Every breath taken with trust strengthens the alignment between the inner world and the outer actions. Alignment is not perfection. It is not about removing every doubt or every moment of fear. Rather, it is about noticing when one has strayed from trust and gently returning. Like meditation, alignment is a practice of return again and again until the return itself becomes natural. In this way, a trust is continuously renewed like the breath, inhaled, released, inhaled again. Without trust, alignment collapses. Without alignment, trust becomes fragile. Together, they form a balance that sustains growth and resilience. To trust is to release the demand for immediate control. To align is to direct that release into a purposeful flow. This union creates an internal strength that cannot be shaken by external changes. Trust and alignment are not conditions to be achieved once, but living forces to be practiced daily. In every choice, in every response, in every silence, and in every action, there exists a duality that every human being encounters in life: the inner world and the outer world. The outer world is full of movement, unpredictability, and often turbulence. It shifts from moment to moment, carrying with it noise, distraction, and the relentless flow of events that demand our attention. In contrast, the inner world is a silent chamber, a place untouched by external storms, yet easily disturbed if one has not learned how to guard it. The question is never whether chaos will appear in the outer world, because it always will. The true question is whether one can establish a state of peace within, a stillness so rooted that outer noise cannot penetrate it. The outer chaos takes many forms. It is found in the conflicts of society, in the expectations of family, in the endless responsibilities that seem to multiply as one grows. It is present in economic struggles, in health challenges, in sudden changes that arise without warning. The mind, when untrained, is pulled outward to react to each ripple, each disturbance, each voice demanding attention. A person living only in the outer world feels as if they are constantly at war, fighting a battle that has no clear end. The exhaustion that follows is not merely physical. It is the draining of spirit, the fatigue of one who has forgotten that there is an alternative way of being. Inner peace, on the other hand, does not depend on the conditions of the outside world. It is not found when problems disappear, but when the individual realizes that problems are not what dictate the quality of the inner state. Inner peace is cultivated like a flame protected by both hands. It requires intention, discipline, and awareness. It is the recognition that the center of life does not exist outside, but within. Once this realization arises, a shift occurs. The chaos outside no longer determines the condition of the heart, because the heart learns to remain unmoved. To develop such peace is not an accident. It comes from the practice of watching thoughts without being carried away by them, observing emotions without drowning in them, and recognizing external events without surrendering one's balance to them. The one who masters inner peace does not avoid the world. They live in the midst of it fully, but they carry a stillness, a silence that remains unshaken even when the outer storms grow loud. The difference between one who has found this peace and one who has not is visible not in words, but in presence. Outer chaos will always attempt to provoke reaction. Noise, argument, sudden changes, or unexpected loss All of these strike like stones against the surface of the water. If the mind is shallow, ripples become waves, and the waves easily overflow. But if the mind has been trained to become deep, then even when stones fall, the depth absorbs them, and the surface remains calm. The chaos is acknowledged, but it does not consume. This is the secret of depth. The deeper one's inner stillness, the less capable outer disturbances are of reaching the core. Many people believe that peace is found when outer life is arranged perfectly, when there are no conflicts, no disturbances, no stressors. But such a life has never existed, and it never will. The world outside follows its own rhythm, its own seasons of harmony and disruption. To chase after outer order is to pursue an illusion. True order, true clarity, is cultivated inside. When it is found, outer chaos may continue to roar, yet the individual moves like water, adaptable, calm, yet powerful. The art of balancing inner peace with outer chaos is therefore not about escape. It is not about hiding from responsibility or isolating oneself from society. Rather, it is about entering the world fully and learning to stand as an unmoved pillar amidst shifting winds. It is about developing the strength to respond without being consumed, to act without being agitated, and to remain aligned with one's essence even as events unfold unpredictably. This balance comes through practice. Breath becomes a tool because every inhalation and exhalation grounds the body and quiets the restless mind. Silence becomes a teacher, reminding the individual that not every disturbance demands a response. Discipline becomes a companion, training the mind to stay anchored when distractions arise. In the end, inner peace is not something one stumbles upon accidentally. It is carved through consistent awareness, like water shaping stone over time. When outer chaos strikes, the unprepared mind reacts immediately. It resists, fights, complains, or collapses. The prepared mind, however, observes first. It watches without judgment, without rushing to label what has happened as good or bad. This observation itself creates space, and within that space lies freedom. The outer world may be burning, but the inner world retains its stillness. That stillness then becomes the ground from which wise action can arise. The contrast between peace and chaos is not a war to be fought, but a relationship to be understood. Chaos does not vanish simply because one has found inner peace, but inner peace transforms the way chaos is perceived. What once appeared unbearable now becomes manageable. What once shook the foundations of the mind now becomes another passing event. Outer chaos remains, yet its power weakens when the inner state refuses to surrender. This is why those who cultivate inner peace are often seen as unshaken even in the most difficult of times. It is not that their lives are free from turmoil. It is that they have discovered a depth within that no turmoil can reach. They walk through storms with the same calmness as they walk through sunshine, because their balance is not determined by the weather outside. It is rooted in the unchanging ground of the self, and from that ground, they draw strength to move forward regardless of circumstance. There is a difference between interest and commitment. Interest comes and goes. It burns for a while and then fades when circumstances are no longer convenient. But commitment is a fire that does not wait for comfort. It does not wait for approval. It does not wait for favorable conditions. Commitment is a decision that carries weight, and it transforms the path itself. When one speaks of the path, it is not merely about external directions, but about the inner road that must be walked daily, the journey into clarity, discipline, and self-realization. To commit to the path means to understand that there will be trials, resistance, and moments when the mind itself rebels. It is easy to commit when the way feels smooth, when the body is rested, when the world applauds. But the true nature of commitment reveals itself when the challenges come. It is in those moments that the individual discovers whether their path is merely an idea or an actual living practice. The path tests you, and it tests whether your words are anchored by action or whether they dissolve when confronted with discomfort. Every tradition, every wisdom teaching speaks of discipline. But discipline without commitment is fragile. Discipline may carry you for a season, but without the deeper vow, the internal promise, it can break like a branch under pressure. Commitment is what holds the structure together when discipline begins to weaken. The body grows tired, the emotions fluctuate, but commitment remembers. It becomes the voice that whispers, "Continue." The path is not something given, it is something cultivated. Each step you take with intention shapes the ground beneath you. Each choice to return to the practice, to the teaching, to the inner silence, builds a road where before there was none. This is why commitment is not passive. It is active construction. To walk without commitment is to wander without direction, easily swayed by passing winds. To walk with commitment is to engrave your steps into the earth itself, leaving a trail of persistence that others can also follow. In commitment, there is sacrifice. One must let go of distractions that weaken the mind, habits that drain the body, and environments that pull the spirit away from its focus. The path does not widen itself to accommodate endless diversions. It narrows, it sharpens, it demands clarity. And this narrowing is not a punishment, it is a refinement. When distractions fall away, the path reveals itself more clearly, and the walker discovers that what was once seen as loss is actually freedom. There is a quiet power in knowing that you will not turn back, that no matter the storm, your direction remains steady. This steadiness itself becomes a source of strength. The individual who commits no longer wastes energy debating whether to continue. The decision has already been made, and this decision liberates energy. Instead of being scattered in indecision, it gathers and fuels endurance. This endurance carries you further than talent, further than inspiration, further even than knowledge. It carries you because commitment has already removed the option of quitting. The path is not only about endurance, it is also about transformation. Commitment transforms the walker. Each repetition of effort deepens the root. Each return to the teaching strengthens the foundation. At first, commitment may feel heavy, as if it binds you. But in time, it becomes light because it dissolves inner conflict. When the choice is made again and again, there is no longer resistance, only flow. The path becomes part of you, and you become part of the path. In the silence of dawn, when the world is still asleep, commitment wakes. In the fatigue of evening, when the mind says rest, commitment speaks again, continue. In the moment of doubt, when the question arises, is this worth it? Commitment replies with action rather than argument. This is why commitment is not about words, but about presence. It cannot be fully described, it must be lived. When one commits, the world responds. Conditions rearrange themselves, people appear, opportunities align, not because the path is suddenly easy, but because energy is focused. What was once scattered across countless directions now points forward like an arrow. And like an arrow, once released, there is no turning back. Commitment is the string that held the bow firm, the energy that gave direction, the invisible force that carried the arrow forward. Yet commitment is not about force alone. It is also about patience. The path is long and its fruits are not immediate. One who is committed learns to trust the process, to walk steadily without demanding instant results. This patience is not passive waiting, but active faith, the willingness to show up fully in each moment, knowing that the path itself is shaping you with every step. There will be temptations to abandon the path, to choose comfort over discipline, distraction over focus, excuses over responsibility. These temptations are not signs of failure. They are part of the test. They reveal the strength of your commitment. Every time you return despite them, you deepen your roots. Every time you choose the path over the detour, your commitment grows stronger than before. The path is not always visible. Sometimes it feels like you are walking in darkness, unsure of where the next step leads. In these moments, commitment is the lantern. It does not always show the entire journey, but it illuminates the ground beneath your feet. And that small circle of light is enough. You step, and the next step is revealed. Slowly, steadily, the path unfolds not because you see it all at once, but because you continue to walk